Franchise centers are hard to come by in the NHL, but without one, teams rarely win a Stanley Cup. Today, let's talk centers and rank my top 10 that are currently playing in the NHL. This is not solely based on this season, so don't comment about a player having low or high stats this year because there's a lot of factors that go into making a list like this, so I want to make it based on potential and who I think is just better than some of the other guys right now. Now, before we get started today, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, I post daily NHL and hockey related content, so make sure you do that now, and let's get right into it. At number 1, I have Connor McDavid. I think there's no surprise here. Connor McDavid is the best player in the NHL, and honestly, it's not even close at this point. McDavid's speed, stick handling, and deadly shot make him the perfect player to build a team around. He sees the ice like no other player in the National Hockey League, and last year he managed to score 64 goals and crack 150 points, which is just unbelievable in today's game. This year he's having a little bit of a down year in goals, scoring the lowest total of his career, but even with his struggles, he's managed to rack up 74 apples with a total of 97 points. Unbelievable that this is considered a down year, but hey, this is what happens when you're the best player in the world. Like I said though, no surprises here. I think you'll rarely find a top 10 list that doesn't include McDavid at the top. At number 2, this year, Nathan MacKinnon is putting the league on notice yet again. He's easily the best center in the NHL this year and is right behind Connor McDavid in my opinion. I think he's a shoo-in to win the Hart Trophy, and the only real competition he's having is Kucherov and Matthews, but I think at the end of the year, he's going to beat them both out. MacKinnon averages around 20 minutes of ice time a game, has the fastest breakout speed of any player, and the mitts on this guy is just indescribable. Mac has 860 points in 771 games played through his career, and this season, like I said, he's on pace to break all of his previous season totals with 37 goals, 64 assists for a total of 101 points, and there's still a quarter of the season remaining, so who knows what he's going to finish with. With Landeskog being out, MacKinnon has also stepped up to not only be the star of the Avalanche, but to become a strong leader as well. Hard to believe that MacKinnon is only 28 years old and currently in his prime. With him on the Avalanche for the foreseeable future, I see this team contending for a long time, and I think Nathan MacKinnon deserves his number 2 spot. This next one, maybe it's a hot take for number 3, but I'm going to take Auston Matthews. The modern day Alex Ovechkin, Matthews is a goal scoring machine. And what's not to like about his game? He's the best goal scorer in the NHL with 53 goals in 59 games played this season and is on pace for 70 right now. People usually chirp Matthews because they consider him to be more of a winger rather than a center because he scores more than he assists. But when you score at the pace that he's scoring at, I don't care what position you play, you can have as many goals as you want and play on my team any day of the week. An underrated thing about Matthews, in my opinion, that makes him a really strong center and doesn't get talked about enough is his defense. Auston Matthews currently has the most blocks on the Maple Leafs by any forward with 70 on the season, and I would argue he's their best defensive forward right behind Mitch Marner. Right now, Matthews has a shooting percentage of 21%, which is just absurd, and I believe through his career and what he's done this season, he's earned this number 3 spot on my top 10 list. Now, this next one is the one that people would probably have at their number 3 spot ahead of Matthews, but for me, Leon Draisaitl is the 4th best center in the NHL. Having 2 top 4 centers on one team is insane for the Oilers, and the contract that Draisaitl has signed, based on the production he's having, is historic. Draisaitl has already accomplished so much in his career. He has a Hart Trophy, an Art Ross Trophy, and a Ted Lindsay Award. Career-wise, he has 822 points in 697 games played, and this year he has 78 points in 59 games played, and will likely finish with the least amount of points he's had in a few seasons, but with the way that the Oilers are playing, I think this isn't a bad thing for Draisaitl. It's still a great number to be reaching, and I think he still deserves a lot of credit. Draisaitl is a phenomenal center, and I would take this guy in the playoffs any day of the week. On any other team in the league, Draisaitl would be a number 1 option, and sometimes it feels like he's even the best player on the Oilers, which is a huge compliment considering his teammate is Connor McDavid. Love Draisaitl and his game, but I think the raw goal scoring ability of Matthews just gives him a slight edge on this list. It's not an insult, you're being mentioned with some of the best players in the NHL, so I think this is the perfect spot for Draisaitl. At number 5, I'm taking the legend himself, Sidney Crosby. Crosby just doesn't accept aging. In fact, he seems to be aging backwards considering the numbers that he's putting up this season and over the last few years. Last season, Crosby led the Penguins with 93 points, took the most faceoffs with 1,846 total on the year, and was second best in wins league-wide wide with 978. This season at 36 years old, Crosby is still putting up amazing numbers with 32 goals and 63 points in 59 games played, making this the 12th time in his career that he's had a 30-goal season and potentially the 13th time in his career that he'll have over 80 points. Some will have Crosby lower on this list, but for me, even with some of the other talented players that are on this list, I can't justify placing him out of the top 5. The pure talent that Crosby brings to the table at this age is once in a generation, and I seriously believe that the way Crosby approaches the game will allow him to play at least until he's in his mid-40s if he wants to stay in the league that long. At this point, I've seen enough from Jack Hughes to place him in this position. Injuries aside, Hughes has been dominant over the last season and this season so far. 22 years old, and last year he reached 99 points, and in this season, missing some time, he has 57 points in 45 games played. Jack Hughes is box office and is on such a team-friendly contract for the level of player that he is. Defensively, he always could improve. He's still young, and that does come with time. Again, just at 22 years old, I'm positive he's going to improve in a lot of the facets that he's not great at right now, but over the next few seasons, I expect Jack Hughes to be a top 5 center in the league. If Jack had stayed healthy at the start of the year, he was on pace to be a heavy Hart Trophy favorite, and you can see when he misses time, New Jersey struggles. Jack is easily the most fun player, has a great personality, and has a lot of potential in the future. Like Jack said in the penalty box, people pay to watch him play, and he couldn't be any more right about that. Now, I can't put into words how happy I am that Elias Pettersson re-signed with the Vancouver Canucks. I just love watching him play for that organization, and I think he's going to be great alongside Quinn Hughes as they move forward with this core. Pettersson had a breakout year last season, getting that 100-point mark, and this season he's on pace to reach 90 by the end of the season, which is well worth the new contract that Vancouver signed him to. Pettersson averages around 20 minutes of ice time a game and has been a consistent plus-minus player, hovering around a positive 15 a season over this year and the last. I know that's a fraudulent stat, but I think it's important when you look at a player like him who was on a struggling team last year with a plus 13 and now having a plus 15 this year. Like Jack Hughes, I think defensively he could work on that side of the ice, but outside of that, I think you'll have a hard time finding a player that is as skilled as Pettersson at age 25 years old, and I think that contract is going to work out really well for the Vancouver Canucks. Now, every season, Aleksander Barkov is named the NHL's most underrated player, so let's give him some love on this list. Barkov, in my opinion, is the best two-way center in the league and should be a lock for the Selke Award this year with Bergeron being out. People also forget that he's a beast offensively, as well as averaging more than a point per game in almost every season. Barkov won 50% of his faceoffs last season, scored 30 power play points, and this year he's on pace to replicate and even beat those numbers from last year. As far as defensive centers go, I would take him at number 1 every day of the week. He's easily the best two-way guy on this list and deserves a lot more credit than he gets on a lot of other people's top 10 lists. Jack Eichel, like Barkov, I feel like he's just a little bit underrated and deserves a little bit more credit, and maybe that's just because he misses a lot of time with injuries, but his game really to me is just perfect for any system. There have been some questions about his health and his career since he left Buffalo, but I think last season he really managed to quiet all of the doubters. Jack led the Golden Knights in the postseason with the most points last year, having 26 with 6 goals and 20 assists. He had 66 points in the regular season last year in a season where no one on the Golden Knights had over 70 points. Just talk about a team guy here. Eichel is a great two-way center as well, and when healthy, I think he's a top 10 center in the NHL. His potential is there. You just got to see him be a little bit more healthy throughout the regular season, but when he's on the ice, he completely changes that Golden Knights roster. And last but not least on this list, it seems like there's a lot of underrated centers, but this is another one that just doesn't get enough love. Brayden Point casually puts up a 50-goal season last year with 95 points, and no one talks about it. Sure, he's playing with Nikita Kucherov, but to me, you have to have a lot of talent to tuck 50 goals in a season. I think it shows there is some skill outside of just playing with a certain line mate. Point has been a pivotal piece to this Tampa Bay team, and this season he is continuing to show his dominance as a center with 32 goals in 65 games played. He will have fewer goals and points than last season and should reach around the 82-point mark again, averaging yet another point per game season. When talking about consistency, Point is a guy that you want on your team, no questions asked, and he deserves to be in the top 10 as well. Let's just go through a few honorable mentions here. Connor Bedard, Tage Thompson, Mika Zibanejad, Rupe Hintz, and Sebastian Aho. They all deserve some credit for their strong center play, and some of them actually almost made it onto my list. But if you guys want to see a part 2 to this, just let me know in the comments below. I can go through my centers from 11 to 20 as well, so let me know if you want to see a part 2 to this list. But this is my top 10 centers list in the NHL today. Remember, this isn't based on this season, so don't rattle off numbers trying to make a case for someone who's just having a really good season above one of these guys. I think through and through, these guys are the top 10 in the league. Like this video, subscribe to the channel. I will see you guys in the next one.